Mikey, the king of the nerds, one grappling champion, getting ready to defend his belt. Me taking on Jared Brooks. Now, let's back up. I feel like I'm part of this. I don't think anybody called Mikey a nerd before I called him a nerd. I haven't heard it. I know he didn't give himself that nickname. Guys give themselves cool nicknames. They even go tattoo it right on their arm. Nobody calls himself a nerd. Nobody wants to be a nerd. I call him a nerd. And by the way, I don't think any of you call him a nerd. I know none of you grappling guys do because he'll whip your ass. You call him a whole bunch of things. You never called him out. None of you. And because he'll whip your ass. It's a really interesting thing. Chael P called him a nerd. He's very nerdy. He puts on his little nerdy glasses. He takes his little nerdy glasses off when he gets to the ring. I mean, he steers into it. He goes. He only eats pasta and pizza. Anyone that ever tells you about their diet's a nerd. I don't care if he eats nails and he's ripped up. If he tells you, he's a nerd. There has never been a meaningful conversation where somebody sits you down and tells you about their diet. Then they'll get really intuitive and tells you, yeah, you know what, I can't even do it because I'm not a nerd. But I called him one, and he's now known as the king of nerds. I'm just wondering if I should get a little bit of credit for that because he's awfully good. Now, Jared Brooks, I could read you his resume. He came to the UFC. Yes, it's that same Jared Brooks. He happens to be the champion, the MMA division over in one right now. I believe he was from Indiana, a state champion wrestler. And there was a time when that resume would be enough. Now, Jared Brooks is very good. I'm not sharing for you a prediction, and I'm not telling you that Jared's not enough. That's not my message here. What I'm sharing for you is there was a time within MMA within grappling, within the acceptable rule set, that having somebody like Brooks, who was a state champion wrestler and a world champion in MMA, was going to be pretty hard to beat, no matter how you wanted to do it. And then along comes one championship with the greatest production, the most money, the most activity. They do these very regularly. Most beautiful prize, the belt. And they also changed the game within the rules, which is a flat time period. If we go the distance, we will have judges, but there's not a point or a criteria system aside from which one of you tried more often to finish this match. That's who the winner is. But that really changed things. You have to understand those rules, and many people won't. Like, you'll see something cool on TV and then think, okay, I got to go join that gym, right? Like, if you're an enthusiast and a self-defense expert and you haven't done a lot of it, it's very common that you would see something on TV that worked, then you would identify what discipline it is, and then you would try to go and find a coach and or a trainer in that art. Right? Guy's flat on his back, and he brings his leg up, and he comes inside, and he reaches him and spins him over, and he comes back, and he hooks something on the heel, and he pulls it this way, and it pulls the guy's knee, and the other guy's tapping and screaming, and he was a world sambo champion. That must be a really effective art. You're not wrong. Like, that would be a really, good place to start. Be precisely a description of what I did, and I believe darn near everybody else did. Or, you could put on your running shoes, open the door, and come back 40 minutes later. Now, 5 years from now, if we were to look at the guy that went in and learned these positions at a slow pace versus the guy that went and got in shape, my money's on the guy that got in shape, and I will admit that it's close. What I'm attempting to share for you is why you see these techniques and these positions, and that makes sense to you, and the leg came this way, and the hips went that way, and the extension, and the elbow was trapped down here. Why that makes a degree of sense to you, and you're at home, and you're watching, and you want to learn that. What's harder to see is the greatest weapon that Mikey possesses, which is the same weapon that Dan Gable possessed when he let the world know in 1972, and that is the weaponization of pace. Combat is a dance in that only one person can lead at a time. All sports work that way. Dan Gable showed us in 1972. He inspired, and then Vince Lombardi, as a coach, came and told us in 1979, the greatest defense is a good offense, and he switched it. Greatest offense is a good defense. But there's a lot of truth to it. You will never have to learn how to defend, and you will never need to defend, and you never will be defending if you have an overwhelming offense. Now, as great as that sounds and problem solved, it takes a lot of work and very few people can do it. It also comes down to DNA. You can do a simple VO2 max on your very first day and realize if you should even be pursuing this sport. Mikey is one of these guys. I mean, if they did an x-ray of his body, I would predict for you, I have no way to know, but I would predict for you that his lungs are larger than the average person. I don't believe for you he has more discipline. I don't believe for you that he works harder. He certainly hasn't been at it longer, but he goes harder. He tries more. He's never on defense because he's always on the offense. It's a very interesting style that shouldn't ever make the 15 minutes. He is going to meet the criteria and he's going to keep that belt. And the only way to change this is by force. So now you have to be in as good a shape. You have to be as technical to be going for these things. But you also have to have the grit and the understanding. And very few grapplers do. They sign up for a grappling event and their coach explains it to them the day before. I come from the wrestling background. We have something called Greco Roman. It was my favorite style, but you had a chance to compete in it twice a year. Once in state and once you had to get on an airplane, and your dad had to have enough money to send you. But there was only 2 events in the country. So we never practiced for it. We never trained for it. Why would you? There's only 2 events in the country. So the day before it was time to do Greco, the coach would tell his freestyle wrestlers, hey, go wrestle and don't touch the guy's legs. That's how you train Greco. That is still, in large part, how they train Greco to this day. And I just bring for you, it's very tough for you to see what it is that Mikey's doing, or you come to a conclusion. You watch Mikey versus these Sambos guys, which was a great gimmick, and all of a sudden jiu-jitsu is better than Sambo. Well, maybe, I don't know, you're talking about techniques. Get those anywhere. Copy of Black Belt Magazine. Go order them online. It's a conditioning. It's a pace. It's harder to see. It's a weapon. It's exactly what Vince Lemons already said in 79. Which is the best defense is a good offense. You don't ever need to be on defense if you're always on offense. It's exactly what Dan Gable showed the world in 1972. When he captured the gold medal without giving up a point. It wasn't about singles and doubles and snap downs. It's not about arm bars and triangles and guillotines. It's showing up, understanding the rules, operating within them, and putting a pressure on your opponent, regardless of his achievements or what his skill set is. I'm not telling you that Brooks can't be the one to match that. He's a champion in high school. He's a champion now. I think his true passion is elsewhere, but he's got a nerd. Nobody wants to lose to a nerd.